It is time to finish the rear fenders. Now I'm laying down some blue tape and duct tape just to protect the paint from the hot glue that we're going to be using and the fiberglass resin. The foam that I use to sculpt is called dry floral foam. You can get it at any hobby store. A lot of people use things like expanding foam and insulation foam. This stuff just sculpts so much easier, and that's why I like to use it. Now, you don't want to use wet floral foam. That stuff will kill you. It's got like formaldehyde and stuff in it. It's not very good, but the dry stuff I think is pretty safe, but I guess use this at your own risk is what I'm saying. So I use a hacksaw blade to sculpt this thing down and then sandpaper just to get it smooth into the shape that I want. The driver's side was about 1/4 inch too narrow, and so I'm just gonna pull it out a little bit with some foam, make sure it matches the passenger side as close as possible. The hardest part about building these kits is making them match. So you'll see me get my tape measure out a lot. That's just to make sure that both of these fenders look the same. Especially when looking at the car from the back, it's important that they're the same width. So I'm gonna have to move this last bolt hole down a little bit. That's gonna flex the back of the fender out and make it the right width. If you've been watching the channel for any amount of time, you've seen text pop up on random videos that says, "Sup Shane?" Well, this is Shane. If you can tell me what causes that text to pop up, I'll send you a free sticker. I use a Dremel tool to cut down the edges of the old fiberglass so that when we lay new fiberglass in, it lays in nice and flat. And then I use the same tool to cut out my little bolt hole divots. The attachment on the end of that Dremel is a drum sander. It is one of the most useful attachments for a Dremel tool. Now I'm using this Sharpie to draw out the line of the actual fender so that I make sure I have enough fiberglass to get all the way around the new piece. Doing the scoops and the bottom part of these fenders is by far the hardest part of this whole process. It's a really complex shape, and it's kind of hard to sand in there, so I'm using a lot of different kinds of blocks to make sure that my shape is completely flat. I've had a hard time figuring out how to get the bottom of this fender to connect back to the car. I really love the way the Ferrari 355 looks. It's one of my all-time favorite designs. And so I decided to put another scoop in the bottom of this kit in order to kind of pull everything back into the car. All right, so it is time for fiberglass. I'm using fiberglass cloth here, and the stuff that I'm spraying on beforehand is just a spray adhesive to hold it in place. Since I'm building this on the car and it's a vertical surface, the cloth wants to kind of pull away from the part, and that Super 77 spray adhesive will keep it in place while I'm laying my resin. If you're going to be getting into fiberglass work, I recommend you get into Amazon and order about 100 of these little chip brushes. You go through them like crazy, and it's really great having a massive box of them, but otherwise you'll be going back and forth to the store to buy more almost every day. You'll see me pushing a bunch of stuff into like the scoops and things like that. I'm just trying to hold the fiberglass in position while it dries. I didn't lay this fiberglass the best, and so I had to push it up and hold it into certain places so it would keep its shape. Done fiberglassing, you can soak your brushes and rollers in acetone. That'll keep them from curing. So once the fiberglass is dried, you just sand and sand and sand. I actually laid some fiberglass filler on top of my fiberglass to give me more stuff to sand, but basically it's wax on, wax off. Fiberglass filler on, sand it all off. Do that again if you have to, and then you can go to Bondo. Now I'm using a lot of Bondo, and that might be concerning, but you have to know that most of this is going to get sanded off, if not all of it. It's just there to fill in the waves and little imperfections from the fiberglass. I needed to reshape the bottom of my fender, so I just laid some fiberglass filler on the bottom of it and then attached it to a board with some melamine on it. Melamine is just like a non-stick kind of surface, and the fiberglass will not stick to it. And so that gives me this completely flat edge when I pull it off. From there, it's just more sanding to get it all flat and level, and it actually came out really, really great. I ended up using this on the other fender as well. Now you'll see me adding more Bondo, which obviously is concerning, but if you'll look at it after it's all sanded, you can see most of the Bondo is gone. It's very, very thin, less than a 1/16 of an inch thick, and that's really where you want to be because you want this to be able to flex a little bit. After that is primer. I use a spray filler primer. It's like called a 2-part filler primer from Rust-Oleum. Works really, really great and fills in some little divots and holes and stuff, and it's easy to get. You can get it at Walmart in the automotive section. Now for the final test fit, everything looks really good. The gas door still opens, and I'm really happy with this shape, so it is time to get these things ready for paint. So after my final test fit, I actually found out that my passenger side bottom scoop was too small. It was too narrow and too short. So I took a bunch of measurements from the driver's side and then transferred those over to the passenger side. This is the best part about working with fiberglass is if you have to add more, if you have to fix something, even this late in the game of the process, you can come back and you can add more and you can sand it down and you can make it smooth. What ended up happening is I ended up having two parts that were really, really close, really similar. It was very noticeable, and if I had left it like this and hadn't taken this time to fix this problem, you would have noticed it immediately when looking at the car. Now the fenders, I get a lot of questions about the fenders. I got the fenders on eBay. It was the cheapest set I could find on eBay. They are 180SX version 1 Rocket Money fenders, and they are replicas because I was going to be cutting them up. So, you know, whatever you can find is the best fender to start with. Make sure you're using a fiberglass fender, not a plastic fender. Plastic does not like being added to and taken away from, and fiberglass does not mind at all. I am a big believer that you can paint anywhere. Automotive paint is very forgiving now. It used to not be that way, and because of that, if you can keep most of the dust out of the air through wet sanding and polishing, you can basically paint in any condition. So what I'm doing here is I'm building a paint booth that cost me $15. This is just drop cloth from Walmart, and basically what I do is build kind of a, if you want to call it, sterile room. It's still very much open to dust, but it does keep a lot of the dust off the floor and out of your paint. Also, I'm using a $15 Harbor Freight gun and a small, I think 8-gallon air compressor. My entire painting setup here costs around $220 with the compressor included. So it can be done cheap, it can be done on a budget, and you can get really good results, and I'll show you that here. The paint that I like using is a more expensive paint. It's not like low end, it's kind of medium grade, and it's called PPG Shopline. Now I do use this paint and I spend a little bit more on this paint because it is just good. It works, and it works in my kind of painting conditions. So if it's a little cold outside, if it's a little hot outside, if it's a little humid in the booth, it just doesn't care. It just sprays and lays down flat and works really well. So I'm a huge fan of this paint. I'm not sponsored by them. I would love to be. PPG, if you're watching this, but I don't use anything else because I've just never had any issues with it. Same with the clear. It's just a PPG Shopline Universal Clear Coat. I love this stuff as well. It just works. And 3 coats of clear later, this is what we've got. Now I am very happy with this finish. This is in a very low-end paint booth in my shop. The clarity is really good. There's not a lot of dust in the paint. It came out awesome. All right, let's get these things on the car. Now, you're gonna notice the color is a little bit different from the fenders to the car. That is simply because the car has not been washed in months. When I'm building these things, I don't normally wash them. So there's dust and all kinds of stuff on the car, but once it's washed, they will match, trust me. I had to do a few adjustments to get these things to mount. That's what you see me drilling and kind of screwing and stuff like that. But I got them in, I got them to mount, and it worked just fine. If I was more accurate with my holes and with my riv nuts earlier in the game, this wouldn't have been such an issue. So we have added a lot of width to this little MR2, and I think it is looking great. Again, guys, I did all of this in my driveway with normal tools that you can get on a low budget, and it came out really good. All right, that's it for this MR Tuesday. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this was helpful. We will see you next week.